Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a hard look at how one of Lisbon's most beloved icons, the historic Elevador da Glória funicular, turned into the scene of an absolutely horrifying disaster. On September 3rd, 2025, right during the evening rush hour, a tram that had been a part of the city's very soul for over 100 years came crashing down one of Lisbon's steepest streets. And this quote from an eyewitness, man, it just paints such a brutal, devastating picture of its final moments. And the human cost? Well, it was just immediate and devastating. The official count confirmed that 17 people lost their lives in the wreckage. But the toll didn't stop there. Another 21 people, passengers, and even someone on the sidewalk were injured, with several of them in critical condition. So you have to ask, right? How does a slow, charming tourist attraction suddenly become a death trap? To really get what went wrong, we first have to understand how this whole system is supposed to work in the first place. Okay, so let's get into it. The Elevador da Glória isn't just a regular tram. It's a funicular, which means it operates on a very specific and actually a surprisingly simple principle. At its very core, it's a railway where two cars are physically linked together by one single super strong steel cable. The whole idea is that they act as counterweights for each other. And this is where you can see the genius of the system. As one car is heading down the hill, its weight and gravity are actually doing most of the work to pull the other car up. It's this really elegant, delicate dance of weight and power, with a little help from an electric motor. And for 140 years, this system has been a reliable, essential, and, a really charming part of what makes Lisbon Lisbon. And it's not just for tourists, it's a vital link for locals trying to get around the city's famous hills. So, if this system is so elegant and it's been working for over a century, what could have possibly gone so horribly wrong? Well, the investigation immediately zeroed in on the single most critical component in the whole setup: the cable. According to the authorities and what multiple eyewitnesses reported, the haulage cable, the literal and figurative link holding the entire system together, just came loose. It detached from the car at the top of the hill. And in that single instant, that perfect balance was shattered. Without the tension from the cable, without the weight of the car below, the upper car had no effective way to brake on that steep incline. It was basically in free fall, just picking up speed as it hurtled down the tracks until it hit that bend in the road. A snapped cable was the clear, immediate cause. But as investigators dug deeper, they started uncovering more troubling questions about the state of the entire system. You have to wonder, was this an accident just waiting to happen? Now this gets to the very heart of the controversy. You see a stark conflict between the operator and the workers. On one hand, the operator, Karis, insisted everything was fine, that all maintenance protocols were followed. But on the other hand, the union said no way. They said employees had repeatedly warned about poor maintenance for years, specifically calling out issues with cable tension and demanding an end to outsourcing the work. And this wasn't the first sign of trouble, not by a long shot. There was a minor derailment back in 2018. No one got hurt, but it was a massive warning sign. Even local riders had been saying things, with one person telling the press he recently rode in fear because he could feel that the rails were just really worn out, especially in the curves. Okay, but this is the question on everybody's mind, right? If the cable snaps on an elevator, emergency brakes kick in automatically. So, why didn't that happen here? Well, the difficult truth is that this historic system isn't like a modern metro or an elevator. It actually operates on a principle that's much more like driving a car or a bus. So here's the crucial point. The system runs on what regulators call the line of sight principle. It means the driver is in complete control and is responsible for managing the speed based on what they can see in front of them. The system just was not designed with the kind of automatic, independent fail-safes we expect today. So when that cable failed, the human operator was left totally helpless. And this comment from an online forum, wow, it just hits the nail on the head. It really gets to the core dilemma, doesn't it? How do you maintain a beloved 140-year-old piece of history while making sure it meets the safety standards of the 21st century? Because retrofitting this kind of thing is incredibly complicated and, very expensive. The crash, as you can imagine, sent shockwaves far beyond just the wreckage on the street. It plunged a city and an entire nation into a period of mourning and deep reflection. The response from authorities was, as you'd hope, swift. They immediately acknowledged just how serious this tragedy was. A national day of mourning was declared, all similar services were suspended, and a full, independent investigation was launched right away to figure out exactly what happened. The mayor of Lisbon, Carlos Moedas, really expressed the deep shock and grief that was felt all across the capital, calling it a kind of tragedy the city had just never seen in its modern history. And this is what it all boils down to. This disaster just lays bare this fundamental tension that so many historic cities face. The challenge of keeping what is basically a museum piece running as a modern workhorse, one that's responsible for millions of lives every single year. And that is the crucial, difficult question this tragedy leaves for Lisbon, and really for historic cities everywhere. When does a piece of heritage need to be fundamentally re-engineered to guarantee public safety? And what are we willing to pay or potentially change to make sure that happens?